we had a RON site set up, so it's a rest overnight. And we joke because technically the camp we're staying in was a RON site too, but it was like more like rest over a year, like rest.
It was a Roy site.
It was a Roy site or a ROM site.
Yeah.
This one was legitimately a RON site, and it was funny. They were all like funny named. We had like Ron Burgundy and like Ron. I think this one was actually called Ron DeRousey.
Yeah.
Like I had a couple of my guys there. They were kind of pre-poed there. That way we wouldn't lose territory in preparation for a bigger operation to come. So I had like a sniper team there, a bunch of our commandos, maybe like 2 or 3 other guys, just kind of rotating in and out security. And I was ground force commander for that day. I also remember I had just gotten promoted that day. I'd made W-2. So like it started off great. Like I was in a super good mood. We had AC-130 flying above, and we get a call from the aircraft, and they're like, hey, we've got 2 guys kind of up in the hills messing around with something. I was like, all right, great. I hope they're bad guys. Let's keep an eye on them. And they call back and be like, yeah, definitely 2 ADMs. So ADMs, adult males. That's usually what we're looking for. Looks like they're digging in a cache. I was like, all right, even better. This is just going to, we're going to kill these dudes right off the bat and just have a great morning. So they're like, hey, yeah, these guys, they just pulled AKs out. They're definitely moving towards your RON site. I was like, all right, sweet. Talk to the snipers on the radio and be like, hey, man, we're getting these reports. They're like, yeah, we see them. They're too far to engage, but like we can tell they're up there. All right, awesome. So my thought on that one was like, because we were about to do an operation, I wanted to kind of send a message. So, talking to the bird through our CCT, like, let's hammer down on these guys. Like, let's not just kill these dudes. Let's destroy the cache. And let's make sure that anybody else that is thinking about doing something today rethinks their decision. Because in the end, as much as, I like the opportunity to kill bad guys, I don't like the opportunity for them to kill my guys, and if that means that we could just shock and awe and speed of violence move through an objective faster than they can engage our guys, I'm going to choose that every time.
Sure.
Like there's no fair fight in war. It's not like, well, let's let them get closer and
overall.
Then we'll engage them with a like weapon. No, like why would I ever put a multi-million-dollar special operator friend of mine in a position to where a freaking like teen with a rusty ass AK could shoot him,
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite sayings as it relates to special operations is if you ever find yourself in a fair fight, you've done something horribly wrong. And I agree, like stack the deck in your favor to the best of your ability every time.
Yeah. Like, nightmare scenario of like, do I want my guys to have to freaking go into a barricaded PKM into a building?
Yeah.
Heck no, man. Like, that's not worth it. Like, how much is that guy worth? No. Yeah. So it's being smart about it. But either way, going back, I was like, let's hammer this thing down. So AC-130 opens up. And, like, for those who haven't seen or watched an AC-130 pound something, it's like, it's incredible. Like, because the distance too, you're hearing a report or you're seeing the puffs of smoke and they're mismatched and you're just watching a freaking airplane shoot howitzers out of it. And they unloaded with everything they had, not all their ammo, but like every munition, they put on a show. So I was like super pumped. They're like, yeah, these guys are dead. Totally. So I was like, yeah, that's great. So a little while later, my snipers report, they're like, hey, there's people going up to the bodies. It looks like there's some women going up to them. We're like, no, we're like, okay, well, let's keep an eye on them, see what they're doing. It's like, it looks like they're trying to hide the weapons. We're like, okay, well, that's weird. Well, not long after, we get a call from one of our local police guys, a shady character, but either way, he's our character. So he calls and says, hey, the village is saying that you just killed a couple of kids. And we're like, no. We saw it. Like, they were bad guys. They had guns. Maybe they were young because, in the Middle East, like when someone says it's a kid, they might be talking about like a 17-year-old dude. And we're like, oh, yeah, like kid, kind of, but,
he's old enough to fucking kill you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we don't think the same thing when they say kid. Maybe they're exaggerating. But like, no, they're saying that you killed some kids. And they're like, the village is getting upset. Like they're starting to like, they're going to want to move in on that position. We're like, oh, okay, fuck. I need to get down there. So it takes me, I think it was about 30 minutes is what it takes me on an ATV and a Razor to get to that position. So
this is where you just bombed out?
This was the Ron site where they were going to like come talk about this situation, that just happened that seemed like it was fairly benign and you really kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. But in the end, it's like, hey, the villages are security and I owe it to them for the conversation. I'm the commander. I called that strike. I'm going to go there. So I get there and things are already like, everyone's really on edge. You know, our commandos weren't from the area, so they were already like super worried. And one of the biggest concerns we had at that time was also green on blue. In fact, not far from there, we had a couple infantry guys just the year prior get killed by their own guys right there in like one of these little buildings. Yeah. So even like triggering an event where a guy might decide today's his day to jihad, you know, we're very sensitive to, and that's why we had to maintain a good relationship with our guys, so they would rat those guys out for us. So any situation that could lead to that, we had to take very seriously. And this was one of those ones. You know, maybe this is the day that the villager decides that he wants to be ISIS now, and he wants to cack something off while we're all distracted. Either way, messy. So I get there, and they're like, hey, these were definitely kids. You know, they're going to bring you the bodies. I was like, don't bring me the bodies. Like, I don't care. Like, I've seen dead guys. Like, whatever. Don't do that. I knew they were bad. You know, if they were young, they were still ISIS. ISIS killed them. We facilitated that transfer, but ISIS made it happen. So they're adamant they're going to bring the bodies. I'm like, all right, I guess we're going to do this. So I tell my guys, it's like, hey, you guys just maintain security. Let's be ready to roll out if we have to. But like, don't let your guard down.
Like ambush.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, hey, like, don't put your guard down. I'm going to be the head of this. I'm going to handle this part, but you guys keep your guns up, you know. So this white Hilux truck pulls up, and we were in like, this is like foothills right where the mountains were. So like big valleys. Nothing was fast to get out of there. So this truck pulls up through this dry riverbed, white Toyota Hilux, kind of backs up to where we are, and they've got the tailgate down, and I can see blankets covering these two bodies, and I'm like, all right, great. So they walk me up to the truck, and they pull back the blanket, and you know, I see two actual kids. They weren't exaggerating. They were like 12, probably like 8 or 9. And one thing I remember specifically about seeing them is that they were like, everything was really clean. You know, they were fairly pale, you know, from loss in blood, but they were really clean. And in that instant, like, where my mind took it was like those kids' faces they were the same age as my boys at the time. My kids' faces became their faces, and like, whenever I even think about the story or go back, like, that's who I see when they do that. Yeah. And that's the only part they pulled back at first, just down to the neck. And when they did that, maybe it was 5 seconds long, but to me it felt like 30 minutes of just, everything was a blur around me. Everything was cloudy. The only thing I was hyper-focused on was just look at these guys. And I was like, oh my God, I just killed these fucking kids. And then they pull back the blankets the rest of the way. And that's when it was like, that's when all the chaos happened. Like, that's, you know, pretty much dismembered, like every limb, exactly what you would expect to happen from getting that sort of munition, you know, assault. So,
but their faces were intact.
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Like, yeah. So they pull it back, and now they're holding up these little kids' limbs, like holding up a little kid's arm and like waving it in my face because they want to show me just how dead they are and just how young they are. And it's like really messing me up. Like, but I have a job to do at that time. You know, I can't like sit there and feel like, oh fuck, I hate that kids had to die, you know, whatever. Because it's just getting worse and worse. The villagers are getting upset, and the IPs, you know, our police are trying to, not IPs, but our Afghan police guys, local police, they're trying to keep them away from our commandos and all this stuff. And again, I just want to get away from the situation before it turns bad, before someone else has an opportunity to kill off an ambush or whatever. So we told our guys, like, hey man, like, we're going to get out of here. I'm sorry that these kids had to get killed, but ISIS gave them those guns. They put them in that position, and that's why this happened. That's the way it is. Blame ISIS. We're not paying for funeral costs. Sorry this happened. We're getting the fuck out of here. So we packed up, and the worst thing about that location tactically was the way to get out of there was through this like dry creek bed with like 30, 40-foot walls on either side. One side with some buildings, the other side with just rock outcroppings, but like the worst place to be in an ambush, to the point where like I was riding back and I was TCing, so I had a saw, you know, a 249 machine gun on a pintle out the right door on this Polaris Razor, and like I don't even think I could elevate that thing high enough, you know, to really be effective. Like I would have had to dismount the gun to even use it if we got contact from up in the hills. So as we're riding through there, everything was so quiet, and like the villagers, they're all sitting there like staring at us as we're rolling through. And the only thought in my mind was there, it was like, this is it. This is when it's going to happen. Like, and if it does happen, it's because I deserve it. Like, I had kind of applied that to myself. I wouldn't say that I had hoped that I got killed that day, but I was like I had already accepted it. I felt like I'd already deserved it. Like, it's not the point to where like if something kicked off, like I wasn't going to fight back, but like I just already kind of envisioned that I was just going to get drilled, and that was going to be the end of my life, and it's because of what I had just done. Like, that would be my penance, and I was okay with that. And it didn't happen. Yeah. We got our way through, got our way back to the village, and once we got back to our camp, I downloaded my guns and walked into my room where my friend Matt was. He was the team leader, and dude, I just hugged him and I broke down. I was like, dude, what the fuck are we doing, man? Like, I just killed these fucking kids, and like, yeah, like all that emotion just come out right there, and that took me years. And, I'm not even fully over that, but it took me years before I even got help because I didn't realize how much it was affecting me. Even I went through subsequent deployments and continued my career, semi-successful from that point. But, mentally, like, I had a lot of struggles with that, a lot of struggles with guilt. And every time I started to do well, or every time I tried to started getting past it, it would get worse and worse because that guilt would build. And one of the reasons why I think we have such a tough time in the special operations community is like, we don't like other people to deal with our shit. My wife, I don't want her to deal with my shit. I don't want my kids to deal with my shit. So I would deal with it alone. Maybe that means like after everyone's asleep, I would put the music on that I knew would take me there, and I would freaking just break down. Or sometimes when I was driving, I'd have to kind of shake it off. Like, I would feel my nose would start to burn and my lip would kind of go there, and I would start getting back there, and I'd have to like shake it off because I was like, not now. Like, I can't fucking do this right now. And I did that for a number of years. Before I even like considered talking to somebody. It wasn't until I was driving with my kids, taking them to school, and my mind started going there, and I couldn't shake it away. And I'd probably driven for maybe 15 minutes, somewhere around there, before I snapped back into it and realized that I had just driven on autopilot for however long. If anything had been different that day, if a car had pulled out in front, if there was a detour, like nothing, like I would have just gone right into it because I wasn't, like, my mind was not driving. I was just, thankfully it didn't happen, but I was like, dude, I could have killed my kids. I could have killed someone else's family because I'm not handling my shit like I should be. And that was like one of the most telling ones. Like, I got to fucking figure this out. Like, either I need to freaking like I'd never thought about taking my own life, but there was definitely times where I was like, hey, if something happens to me, like, that would be okay, which is very similar. So I was like, either something needs to happen or I need to get some help because like I can't fucking do this. Yeah. So